Hi, Olive. How you doing?
Hey Chris, how are you?
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you. Yeah, I've been put into a new cast for my finger, so this is the last one that I have for 4 weeks until I can just get back to playing football. So looking forward to that. How about yourself?
I'm good, thank you. Beside work, I have now started my therapist educational work. I'm in the community now, and it's really good.
So I can come to you if I have any problems. Anyway, so the reason for this session today, Olive, was I wanted to talk a little bit more around privacy, security, and compliance with Microsoft 365 Copilot. It's a big buzzword going around at the moment, especially with Copilot, going on to the early access program. We've been given some indication of pricing as well, which obviously everyone's talking about. I get asked a lot by customers around how Copilot respects security and compliance that's already in place. So I really wanted just to focus on that, if that's okay.
Yes, that's okay. I think it's the hottest topic at the moment because we run on zero trust policy. And with Microsoft 365 Copilot, we respect all the security compliance and privacy settings, which is in the tenant and the customers are currently using. So we are completely inheriting and not changing anything. And I think Microsoft 365 Copilot will help the customers to secure their environment more and more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of leveraging to get the full benefits out of Copilot will be extremely important. So when we look at privacy and security, we're referencing things like labels and encryption, aren't we? And in terms of the differences between some of the label functionalities, obviously, if a customer has M365 E3, they can set manual labels. So the users can manually apply encryption, rights management to their files, and therefore Copilot will respect that. And we're also seeing more and more of our E5 customers deploy automatic labeling, where you train the system where it would be able to detect certain personal identifiable information or possible other trigger points. So you can train it to sense things like product codes, numbers, certain structures of data, where once it hits that trigger, it will be able to automatically apply a sensitivity label or encryption or a watermark or even things like retention as well, which is quite important. So what are the levels of security that we've got?
So with Microsoft 365 security, we are architected to protect the tenant group level as well as the individual data. So we know a major concern for you, the customers, is saying in control of access to business data within the organization and within your tenant or the customer's tenant. We actually provide the permission model that helps ensure that the right groups and the users have access only the data they're supposed to access, and no one else should have access to all these documentations, which sits in Microsoft 365 tenant.
And then when it comes to the actual labels within documents, obviously that's where it's protected at the file level as well. And we're only able to access it if we have got the right authentication, and then with the authorization, actually controlling what we can and can't do with that document. So for example, I could send you an email, Olive, and through rights management, you're able to open up that email, but you're not able to forward it, you're not allowed to print it, you're not allowed to extract any information from that email. So I wanted to test this a little bit further, so I started playing around with the Purview compliance portal, and just to see where Copilot will and won't function appropriately. And to be fair, the results were quite fascinating. So what we were looking for is to say, okay, where is the line where Copilot will access documents and which ones it won't access? So this kind of fizzles out into two separate experiments. So the first one is, what can Copilot access indirectly, still on behalf of the end user because it still needs to work on a prompt, but then also within the document itself, where does the line stop in terms of what it can and can't do? So I started playing around a little bit within Purview. I started creating a few labels, and I set, I think, about 3 or 4 different types of labels. And if you've ever worked with Purview with labels, the idea being is that you can set either encryption or just leave it as it is. You can set things like watermarking. You can set headers and footers to say this is confidential. You can apply encryption, and you can also apply the sensitivity labels, which has a lot more control around the rights management piece. And then also you can set other things, like if an end user changes a label, you can set a control that says they have to justify why they changed the label. And then you can apply these labels to documents, to emails, and then also through meetings as well, like we've seen with Teams Premium. So I ended up creating about 4 or 5 different labels, and the idea being is that we ended up creating labels with just the watermark and all the non-encryption, which is great. And we found that Copilot will access those documents. And if you say, can you summarize this document, it will be able to say, yeah, okay, this document contains this information. And interestingly enough, you can also ask other questions of it as well. So you can say, is this document encrypted? It will say no, of course it's not encrypted. You can say, is this document watermarked? And it will say yes or no. And you can also ask, is this document confidential? And it will say, yes, this document has been classified as being confidential, which is great. Then we started building the labels, which then adds encryption to it. Now, straight off the bat of this, if you were to reference it indirectly, so if you went onto business chat and say, can you summarize this document? It will say, nope, sorry, I'm not able to do that. And then if you used it within, say, like SharePoint Online and say summarize, it will give you a little badge that says this document is encrypted. So it won't be able to access documents already with that encryption. Now, this tells me that Copilot, even though it works on behalf of the end user still needs to authenticate themselves before they gain access to this document. So this is where we then said, okay, that's fine. As an end user, I'll be able to access this document. So I open it up within Word, and then it's then authenticated me through rights management, through my identity. And this is where the permissions can then be explored a bit further. So the first label I created in this instance was like read only. Now, read only for everyone is like, I can view content, but I cannot edit it. I can't extract anything. I can't do anything with it. And as we opened this up, it was quite interesting because if you notice that when you open it up with read only, all of your editing tools just disappear. And then with the editing tools, the Copilot plugin also disappears as well. So you're not able to use anything. So this is just read only. So it respects that completely. And then for any other labels, if you've actioned the edit permissions, then what you'll see is that as all of your editing tools become visible, the Copilot plugin will be there. And therefore, once you've authenticated yourself and you've got permissions to edit, this is the minimum that Copilot will need to be able to work within that document. So it's interesting because you've got all these other commands. So you've got export, extract, but none of them require Copilot to work. It's just that editing. So for our customers that have got labels, it's something to bear in mind that if you do have the edit rights from an end user, they can then edit this document, and Copilot will be able to extract information, take it to the LLM, and be able to process what it is you've asked it to do. And then the other one was we had things like full rights. That all obviously works because you've got every single capability. So obviously Copilot will work with that. The last thing I also tested was just to have encryption, or you have encryption with a password, for example. And once again, if you use Copilot indirectly, it won't work. You have to open up the document, you have to de-encrypt it in order for Copilot to be able to work its magic. So we tried testing a few little bits, and it's great because if you're concerned about Copilot just accessing anything through a prompt, like through cross-app experiences, Copilot by itself, it will have its own identity, of course. It will have like an app ID, but it won't be able to open up anything that's been encrypted or has a sensitivity label applied which has encryption or the rights management piece. It always has to authenticate through the end user first, and then the authorization then kicks in where you can and can't use Copilot within the application itself. So yeah, there are some interesting differences. So, for any customers that have got labels applied, then, it's worth having a review of what people can and can't do with those labels. For things like retention, though, as well, if you've got a document that expires after 5 years, guess what? Copilot won't access it after 5 years because it's either been archived or it's been it's been deleted, so that's not a problem at all. But yeah, really interesting findings from this. I think obviously the video should help explain this a little bit more and just show the experience.
I remember when you tried to use the Copilot to summarize or transform that documentation, it said this is encrypted. This is how we are making sure that we cannot access to the encrypted file unless we decrypted it.
Yeah.
So the content is safe. Everyone's feeling safe.
Yeah, exactly.
This might also help us to define what kind of sensitivity labels we can use with Microsoft Teams Premium. So within Teams Premium Advanced Security capabilities, you can actually create different meeting templates, and you can just select different kind of label, like high confidential into that meeting. As far as we know, Copilot won't be able to access those meetings because those meetings is, let's say that you created an intellectual property and you will have only 50 people in that secure meeting, if it's end-to-end encrypted, to share some secret informations. And actually, Copilot will help us to define which kind of meeting we need to have, but for what kind of personas and what are the use cases. So within those early access programs, we are trying to define which users have the license enabled to get the most out of Microsoft 365 Copilot. And I think this will be very interesting to see from different line of business, because not everyone is an early adopter, not everyone is using our Office applications in their day-to-day life. So we need to select the right people to give the right information in the right time, enable to do cost saving, time saving, and create more efficiency and be more productive with the tooling.
So in regards to an encrypted or watermarked meeting with Teams Premium, that turns off the capability to transcribe those meetings, which Copilot depends on. So the first part is the end user needs to be, well, firstly invited to the meeting in order for Copilot to work through Recap. But also in terms of when they're actually in the meeting, if it's end-to-end encrypted, then nothing gets recorded or transcribed, or even we don't apply any voice quality features or anything like that at all. And it's the same thing applies with watermarking. When you watermark a meeting, you're unable to record it, because the whole point of watermarking is to try and trace who may have recorded the meeting through like a phone or something else. So yeah, it's an interesting handoff, isn't it, where if you have Teams Premium for a secure meeting, you have to make sure that you have to be aware that Copilot will not work for those sensitive meetings as well, but it does respect those labels, which is fantastic. That's exactly what we want. And as you've said, if we look at the use cases and just making sure that those types of personas are aware that whilst they have got a sensitive meeting, they can't benefit from the deeper insights from Copilot, but actually for other types of meetings where transcription is turned on, and they can benefit from Copilot. So yeah, some very interesting use cases there, I think. Well, no, thank you so much, Aliv. This has been a really useful session. I just like, discussing like thoughts and ideas with you, just, bouncing off each other, which is great. So yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, so the next video might be covering Bing Chat Enterprise, and Microsoft 365 Copilot in Bing.
That would be a fantastic video, because we can go through the differences, the use cases and the benefits, and also the risks that are associated with those. So yeah, looking forward to that. Let's do it at some point. I'm going to go on holiday first, and then we'll probably do it when I'm back. Thank you so much for your time, Aliv. I'll speak to you later. Cheers.